Hello and welcome back to Coffee Kurosawa, the friendly film crit podcast. I'm Ben Filipkowski, your resident film freak.
And I am Farrah Sarpkaya, a person who loves film, but like in a super chill, let her speak sort of way.
And today we are talking about Rogue One, a Star Wars story, the Gareth Edwards-directed, Tony Gilroy edited trip Star Wars took into gritty war fiction in 2016. Starring Felicity Jones, Diego Luna, Ben Mendelsohn, Mads Mikkelsen, Donnie Yen, Forrest Whitaker, Riz Ahmed, Alan Tudyk, and Zhang Wen, Rogue One is a prequel to Star Wars: A New Hope, which is what a shocking thing to do. I can't believe that they would do a prequel like that.
For a prequel for a prequel.
Yeah. It in fact takes place over the span of like a few days, maybe like a week, before the events of that movie. To sum up a lot of plot in a short amount of time, and a lot of really weird, almost needlessly convoluted plot in some senses of the term. This is the story of how a group of rebel spies learned about the Death Star and staged a desperate raid to steal the plans for the battle station, revealing its one weakness. The twist? One of these spies, Jyn Erso, is the daughter of the man who was forced into service to design the Death Star. For her, the Death Star isn't just an existential threat. It's the reason her mother is dead and her life was torn apart 15 years ago. Jyn's mission, save her father Galen, find the weakness he built into the Death Star, and save the fractured Rebel Alliance. But her compatriot, the hardened Cassian Andor, has a much simpler objective: kill Galen Erso. I just want to take a sidebar here. I'm not sure why he has to kill Galen Erso. That seems like a vague plot point.
Don't take plot into this.
Anyways, the two are joined in their mission by the blind Force monk Chirrut Imwe, his gunslinging best friend Baze Malbus, ex-Imperial pilot Bodhi Rook, and the reprogrammed Imperial combat droid K2SO. They steal an Imperial cargo ship, dub it Rogue One, and make their play to steal the plans, whether or not the Rebel Alliance higher-ups like any of it. Without getting too into the weeds, this story is ultimately one of sacrifice and hope, and it might be one of my favorite pieces of Star Wars fiction. As a movie, it is a blast to watch. It's really entertaining. It's real messy, though, which I think we'll get into. And the reason behind that is because the production of it wound up being a really fascinating story in its own right. And ultimately, this movie led to, in my opinion, one of the finest examples of TV storytelling ever made. But that's a whole different conversation compared to what we're talking about in this in this podcast episode. So before we really dig into anything, Farrah, what'd you think?
So I saw this in theaters when it came out. We went down to Philly and saw it with a friend who is much more of a Star Wars person than I am. And it was good. You know, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I definitely loved the idea of it. And then I watched it again for the pod, and I paid a lot of, like, serious attention to, you know, literally anything, and it started to fall apart, and not in like a making it bad kind of way, but in a this feels really disjointed and really like messy, and also like I don't know, the heroine didn't super interest me because she didn't feel terribly consistent. We don't really know a lot about her except for who her dad is, and I was like, I don't want a self-insert here. I want like a super cool rebel or not. And then she becomes one, but we don't get any of that. And at the same time, like, there were so many moments that were really cool, but also not explained at all or fully out of context. And for people like me who are not like crazy Star Wars intense fan people.
Or not me. Yeah. You can say it. That's fine.
I know. People who are not Ben. There were a lot of moments where, like, do I care about this for the plot, or do I care about this because this is a Star Wars Easter egg lore thing? And, like, throughout the whole thing, I was asking my husband, Brandon, who was watching it with me, and you, via Discord, like, do I need to know who this is? What is happening? Why is this person here? What is going on? And I don't want that in my movie, necessarily. But all that to say, I wanted to like it. It was a really cool idea, and I really like the idea of, like, this engineer gets kidnapped, you know, kid goes off, does some stuff, grows up, saves the day, whatever. That's cool. But I don't know. It didn't feel like it lived up to the potential that was there. And I think all of that potential maybe went into Andor, the TV show, based on how many times Ben has recommended it to me. And I still haven't watched it, but I'm going to at some point. But like, look, it was a fun watch. I really enjoyed it. I love Alan Tudyk and Diego Luna. Felicity Jones does a great job with what she is given, and the rest of the cast is obviously incredible. But like, the changes, the pivots, we picked this up in part 1 and part 2 is just like, whatever, we forgot that existed. Also, why are we excited that she's here? All of that made me kind of be like, it was fine.
I mean, you've said something here. There's like no second act in this. It's like first act, things go wrong, second act. And that's okay. But it does throw off the rhythm of it a bunch. Yeah. What you're talking about here is kind of the disjointed nature of it is kind of the story of the production of this film. And I don't think it's because of anyone. It's not like this thing was like an absolute train wreck of a production. This is like the second thing that Disney produced after buying out Lucasfilm. And they hired Gareth Edwards to direct. Gareth Edwards came from a really like independent, guerrilla filmmaking style background, and that doesn't necessarily lend itself well to like, hey, this movie has to line up with a bunch of other stuff in the wider Star Wars world. So like you get some cool stuff out of it, and a lot of that cool stuff wound up in the trailers, but doesn't wind up in the finished movie because it doesn't fit the story that they're trying to tell. So yeah, the production of this is fascinating. There's a great podcast out there called Going Rogue. The entire first season of it is like 6 episodes on, hey, here's the long tale of how this movie came to be, and it starts in like 2003, which is buck wild. Yeah. I
mean, it reminds me a lot of, as someone who has been a writer and an artist and a bunch of other stuff in my various careers and hobbies, where you do like, I write part of the story, the next person writes part of the story, the next person writes part of the story, and like, it builds on each other, but not necessarily with the through line. And that kind of is going to, I'm strategically leading us into kind of our first sort of bucket here of like, this, from what you've described, was a very collaborative film. And I love that for it. But it really did just not hit the mark in terms of like continuity and having like a singular, consistent, what am I supposed to be?
Yeah. Like, is this meant to be a gritty war movie? Is this meant to be spy fiction? Is this meant to be like a character study? Or is this meant to be like a piece of Star Wars IP that references other things? And it tries to be all of them.
And the answer is yes.
Yeah. And it doesn't really nail it. There are, I think it's 4 credited writers on this. And then,
Okay. Didn't you say they have to have like 33%? So that's 4 people with 33%. The math isn't mathing. What's happening?
So, writers. So I'm clicking on IMDb. I have the IMDb open right now. Writers per the WGA. Chris Weitz and Tony Gilroy are the last 2 people to work on it. Actually, there are 5 names here. Okay, so it's based on characters created by George Lucas. So they have to credit the IP owner, or the original IP owner and creator. Then you have John Knoll gets a story by, and then he gets "and" written out, not with an ampersand. There's a noted difference there. I think with the ampersand, I will look this up, and if I'm wrong, we'll note it in like show notes or something. But if you have 2 writers on something and they are joined by an ampersand, I think that means that's direct collaboration. Like they're passing pages back and forth. If it is A&D written out, it means that someone passed on a draft to the studio and then was like done with the project and never touched it again. So you have John Knoll gets story by. John Knoll was a VFX supervisor at Lucasfilm for years. and actually pitched the original idea for this in like 2003, back when George Lucas was like, I'm going to do a gritty TV series called Star Wars Underworlds. And it sounds like really cool. But each episode was going to cost like $50 million US, which is just unheard of expensive.
Bananas.
Even in today where budgets are absolutely unheard of expensive. So, yeah. So anyways, he comes up with the original concept, which is basically like that. There's like a line of text in the opening crawl of A New Hope, which is like, rebel spies have like made off with the Death Star plans. That's the entire genesis of this movie. It's like one line, which I think I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, no, that's
So John Knoll pitches it in 2003, and then when Lucasfilm gets sold to Disney in, I think it's 2014, he's like, I got to pitch it again. I got to try again. So he pitches it again, doesn't hear anything back, and then like one day gets an email from I think like higher ups, like Kathleen Kennedy, who's like the producer at Lucasfilm. It's like, hey, yeah, just by the way, we're making that thing that you pitched to us, which is what a wild thing to get. So that's John Knoll's involvement in this. He does, I think, share some notes with Gary Whitta, who does a first pass of the story and the screenplay. Then it goes on to Chris Weitz, who gets a screenplay by credit. So that's three people working on the story and the screenplay alone. And that, I think, is... There's another name involved. Simon Kinberg is also brought in for, like, uncredited rewrites because he doesn't get sufficient... Yeah, he doesn't get the sufficient to get the screenplay credit. They go to shoot the thing. They shoot the thing. The director turns in his director's cut to the studio, to Disney. And then Disney have been confident in this up until this point. And I don't know if it's... I shouldn't say that. Everything Disney has said publicly about this is like full, unwavering support of all the creatives behind it. That's great. But then they bring in Tony Gilroy for 5 weeks of work for an alleged like $12 million or $15 million to oversee the reshoots and do script rewrites. So Tony Gilroy has talked about this in like podcast interviews, I think this past year, because he's been doing the rounds to promote Andor. But everyone is very courteous and kind to everyone else who worked on this thing. But Tony Gilroy has said, like, he has put it a certain way in a podcast interview where he says, I came in after director's cut and I have a screenplay credit. So Tony Gilroy had to touch 33.3 repeater % of this script to get that credit. And I think that kind of says a lot. I have a dog barking elsewhere in the house. That kind of says a lot about the production of this, is that it is disjointed. It is a little wonky. There's a different tonality to it before the reshoots. The reshoots really reshape everything that this movie is. Gives us new character introductions, like Cassian's character introduction is a reshoot. Jyn being busted out of the labor camp that she is imprisoned in for some, which we don't fully know why. There's a bit of dialogue about it, but not much. That's a reshoot. Jyn loses most of the sense of humor that she had with the original shooting script. It's present in like 2 scenes, and it seems out of place because she's very reserved for the rest of the movie. The third act gets pretty drastically overhauled. Cassian was also supposed to be like a double agent at some point. I don't know if that was ever shot, but it was certainly in one of the initial script passes way back when. So this thing's weirdly messy. There's a lot going on in terms of how it's made that make it as... I mean, like, I don't know that I necessarily notice how wonky it is in terms of like those like odd tonal shifts that it'll make, because they're not huge, but they are there and they are noticeable. So this is an odd one for sure.
The tonal shifts were definitely present for me, but they were not nearly as like jarring as just the as just like the plot stuff that didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And or I did it again. And /or
and or the hit TV series.
Or the hit TV series that I'm going to have
Emmy
to watch
nominated television series and or.
Yes. The lack of, I don't know, just information about characters. Because, like, one of the things that we've talked about in the past with other Star Wars properties is that they're really good at giving us simple, fun characters that we can, like, see the past of without having to be told the past of, right? Bar none, that's the thing that Star Wars is really good at. They build a world, and they have all these little Easter eggs about, like, this is why Obi-Wan feels all of these feelings about Vader, but we don't have to know the why. We just know that he has feelings. Like, they're really good at that. And then here, we have our leading lady, who, A, I barely know her name, even by the end of the film, and B, I know nothing about her and who she is, other than the fact that her dad died and her mom, for some inexplicable reason, is basically sacrifices herself just for the sake of this child now has to be alone to be handed over to Forrest Whitaker. Like, what? I don't...
You make it sound like that's a bad thing, being handed over to Forrest Whitaker. It's not.
It's just the... What, truly a treasure, but why does her mom have to just throw herself away for the sake of letting her daughter be thrown? You know, like, it doesn't.
Yeah.
There were a million different ways to get rid of the mom, so we had a Disney, like, the parents are out of the picture, we don't need to worry about this kind of situation. And it just... Collaborative filmmaking is an art form, and I feel like generally speaking, Star Wars is really good at it. Star Wars Properties is really good at that consistency. This movie? No. They did not do as good a job as I expected from a Star Wars property. Particularly one with, in theory, very simple plot. In theory.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think what you're saying to me is like the characters and the archetypes that are present in Star Wars, they're so evocative. Mm-hmm. They do a lot with so little. Yeah. This movie has that evocative nature, but it doesn't fully deliver on it. Like, for all the faults that George Lucas has as a writer, I think he understands those, like, big Joseph Campbell, Hero with 1,000 Faces archetypes. He understands, like, Han Solo's a rogue and a scoundrel. Mm-hmm. Therefore, he does these things, but he's got the heart of gold. So that's like that's the character right there. Like, he's got this abrasive exterior, but, like, you know, this core to him. Yeah. This movie doesn't quite deliver on that. So we wind up with characters like Donnie Yen as Chirrut Imwe, who's this wise, playful, almost trickster mentor type, the blind wise monk. And feels very, like, evocative of, like, Hong Kong martial arts cinema.
I want him more.
Yeah, and he's great. He's evocative. But meanwhile, his best friend, Baze Malbus, played by Jiang Wen, is just kind of there. He's the burly, grumpy gunslinger guy. Yeah. But that's not really much of a character. You have K2, the droid, is a snarky droid. He's the big guy in the group. Evocative. Bodhi, the Imperial defector, it's kind of just there. And that's not that's not a critique of anyone's performance, because all these actors are incredibly talented. They are stars in their own right. I think this was one of Riz Ahmed's, like, first big roles, and, like, everything I see that guy in is incredible. Yeah. Bodhi Rook is not one of those characters. He's just kind of he has moments. There's a great moment where you see the reverence he has for Galen Erso, who, like, encouraged him to defect and to rebel, and he's got this, like, hero worship. That's incredible. That's so cool. The movie's not terribly interested in that, or it doesn't have the time to dig into that. So, and I mean, and with the two leads, you have Jin, who's kind of there. Jin she rebels. That's kind of her thing, but not really, because she's a reluctant rebel. Meanwhile, Cassian has been in the fight since he was a kid. Cassian gets all this, like, all these great character moments that just, it's really mixed. It's really hit and miss. And again, I love the cast in this. Like, I mean, I think I'm going to sidebar here. Felicity Jones is incredible in The Brutalist and probably should have won an Oscar for it over Adrian Brody in The Brutalist, because that was like 3 hours of Adrian Brody just brooding, and that was not fun. Every scene that Felicity Jones is in that movie is incredible. So go watch that if you haven't, if you have a cool 3 hours to kill.
So I think in the first I think we've done 2 Star Wars episodes at this point, and at any given Star Wars, I can identify the D&D party, you know? And in this one, we have our monk, we have our barbarian. In theory, they're best friends, but I also didn't get that until the very end. And even then, I was just like, are they friends, or is the barbarian just kind of putting up with this guy, and now he suddenly is, like, inspired by his dedication to the Force? Like, I have moments of that. With Cassian and Jin, I'm like, okay, so we have our rogue, and we have our maybe rogue with the tragic backstory that doesn't really have a lot of depth to their backstory. They just want to be cool. Because later on in the movie, Jin is, like, doing some really cool, like, jumping and climbing and fighting and stuff. And you're like, okay, I get that she grew up with Forrest Whitaker, who is a big, powerful, big, bad pirate in some other campaign. But why? Like, we never get any context in why, and just the parts that fall through the cracks for me are the parts that make it so jarring, because some of them are just, like, big parts. The main character, for example, they're just big parts that just, because so many people touched that character and didn't have that consistent through line and understanding of who she was as a person, we get kind of a nothing burger out of her. And she had so much potential. I want them to make this movie again with, like, one guy or gal writing it and directing it.
Yeah.
And make it one thing.
Yeah.
Is that what Andor is? Is that just what Andor is?
Yeah. Andor's like, hey, did you like Cassian Andor in the movie Rogue One? Here's his backstory.
Here's a bunch
24 episodes of him developing as a character. Also, we're going to introduce a bunch of cool other stuff that that's going to make you laugh and cry, and it's going to be amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, like, implied backstory, and we see a bit of Jin's backstory, but not the stuff that would be the most interesting. We see this, like, fracturing moment of director Orson Krennic shows up with his death troopers to the Urso farm, and he's like, hey, you got to come back.
One last job.
Yeah, there's an incredible bit on, I think it's the Auntie Donna podcast, of, like, oh, good day there, boys. You want to build a Death Star? Just doing an incredible Ben Mendelsohn impression. It's worth it. Please go watch or listen to that if you haven't. It's hilarious. But yeah, Ben Mendelsohn as Orson Krennic shows up. He's like, hey, we got work to do, man. And Galen's like, no, thank you. I don't like making weapons. You're like, great. Character dynamic, relationship. I understand this in moments. I get this. Lyra is Jin's mom, and is like, we got to hide you. We got to get away. Galen is going to not sacrifice himself, but he's going to go as reluctantly as possible to try and buy time for his family to get to safety and into the relative safety of Saw Gerrera's protection. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. But then Lyra runs back after Galen's been like, oh yeah, Lyra died, and Krennic's like, oh man, that sucks, dude. I'm so sorry.
It's funny that she's right there.
Go search the place. And then she shows up again, and he gets the incredible, like, oh, look, here's Lyra, back from the dead. Incredible. Mm-hmm. Like,
yeah.
So it's just like this moment of, like, it's super evocative. And then we jump 15 years into the future, and we don't see anything of what Jin has gotten up into in that time. And that, I'm not saying that is, like, inherently bad, but the only hint that we get that she is like this, I guess like erstwhile reluctant rebel is that she keeps getting arrested and they have to spring her from an imperial labor camp that she's in under an assumed name. And that's kind of it.
Yeah, and we don't know what it's for. It could be petty thief. She could have stolen a speeder to go, go have a party. Like, we don't get any sense that she's doing anything with that. In fact, given Cassian's response to her, we get the distinct impression that it has nothing to do with being a rebel. It has everything to do with being a criminal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And...
Well, she spends X number of years with Saw's crew.
Yeah.
But I guess, like, he abandons her maybe when she's, like, in her late teens.
She was 16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the implications in this movie is that Saw is a rebel, and he has his own rebel cell, the partisans. But they are like, you guys are too radical. You guys are too hardline for the mainline rebel alliance, which is a major problem that Star Wars in general has with that character throughout other media. But that's beside the point. Yeah, like, Jin is implied to be this rebellious, resourceful individual, and she clearly has this background in all this stuff and a motivation to do all this stuff. But
yeah, and apparently the fitness to parkour onto a giant data bank, but that's beside the point.
With like the little slicey door, and she times it perfectly. It's terrifying.
The amount of ab strength that is required for that moment. I'm like, girl, what are you...
Core
how
for
much
days.
time do you spend doing pull-ups?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so,
why?
and she's clearly competent. There's that bit in Jeddah City where they're pinned down and the stormtroopers close in, and she like whips out a riot stick and just beats the hell out of fully armored stormtroopers.
She's a crack shot.
Yeah.
And you're like, what?
Yeah.
Why?
What's going on? Yeah. Like, what have you been up to?
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we've gotten a little bit away from what we're talking about. But yeah, like these implications of character are cool as hell. And we never get like that full delivery of who some of these characters are. Cassian gets it in spades. A bunch of characters get it in spades. Cassian's introduction is a really interesting one because we've been led up to, there are decades of bits of Star Wars media that are like, the rebels are the good guys. They don't do anything wrong. Cassian's first thing is to get information from his rebel contact and be like, it's okay, we're going to get out of this, and then kill the guy so that he can make an escape. And like, it's this cold, calculated move. It tells us a lot about the character. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like in that moment, I know more about him than I know about Jin.
Of course, exactly. Yeah, like he gets the establishing character moment that she does not have, and it's not just. And again, it's not just Jin who is robbed of these things. Like Baze he's here. He's a cool gunslinger guy. That's about it. There's not much more. There are implications about who he might be. There's expanded universe stuff that's like outside the film that you can go and look up on your own time. But, that's extra work for you as an audience member to do, to check that out. So, yeah, it's a little odd. And it's a little odd because we're getting these moments as we are getting explicit nods and winks to other Star Wars media. Like, we were talking about this, but in Jeddah, Jin bumps into, I think it's Dr. Evazan from A New Hope, who's the guy that gets into it with Luke at the Star Wars cantina, and Obi-Wan's like, no, be cool, man. It's not worth it. And the guy's like, no, I'm gonna escalate the situation. Obi-Wan's like, all right, cool. I'm gonna kill you and cut off that dude's arm.
At least it cauterizes immediately.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Love that for him.
Yeah. So it's
the fact that they were included and they had to immediately have gotten on a ship because that city is flattened.
Well, maybe that's why they were so angry with Jin, because they're like, we're trying to catch our flight. And you're just delaying
Everybody
us.
gets irritated when they get on a plane, even in a galaxy far, far away.
That's the only, like those guys must have been like literally like, we got to get on our ship. We got to leave. We're late. Come on.
One of the things that this movie does, kind of in that same vein, as part of an expanded universe, they do a lot of nods to other stuff. And most Star Wars properties do this. We see random droids in random places, and we're like, oh, that was the guy from that thing, and then whatever. And some of the fanboys are like, oh, that's this guy, and they're from this movie, and you see them here, and this, and like, they have the lore. And then there's people like me who are not Ben. And for me, it does nothing other than, like, I turn to my husband and go, do I have to know who this is for the plot? But I feel like this movie didn't do that as well because of that inconsistency of through line, which makes it harder for me as the lay person to just be like, okay, I know I have to care who, like, raised Jyn. I need to know who Forrest Whitaker's adopted dad is. Kind of, vaguely. I super need to know the random guy that showed up at the council meeting, but I have no idea who this is until the very end when he's like, I have to get back to home planet.
Yeah.
Thank you. And get back to my daughter. And you're like, oh, okay. I see now. Or like, why are R2-D2 and C-3PO here besides fan service? It's because Leia's ship is here. And Leia's around here somewhere, but we haven't seen her and she's not at the council meeting. Yeah. And you're like, what is happening?
Yeah. And then you also have the bit where Krennic's going to his boss's boss to complain about his boss. He goes to see Darth Vader to complain about Tarkin. And Vader's like, are you serious, dude? Like... I don't have time for this. I have other problems.
Yeah. That they teach you that working in corporate business. You don't go to your boss's boss to complain about your boss unless you have a very good reason.
Yeah.
And that's not a very good reason. So,
no.
Rookie move, man.
I do love how, like, petty and catty the Imperial officers are with, like, their power struggles. Like, that is a very, like... you know, the fascist machine eating itself moment that I really enjoy. Yeah. Just,
Star Wars, The Office.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, there are those nods. And I think the biggest nods are by far the character of Tarkin, Governor Tarkin, who is the overseer of the Death Star in A New Hope, and was played by Peter Cushing at that point in time. Peter Cushing died, I believe, in the 90s, and they hired actor Guy Henry to come in and play Tarkin. Guy Henry does a really good vocal impression of Peter Cushing, but instead of just, you know, doing up this actor in makeup to make him look like enough like Peter Cushing, they decided to CGI an entire Peter Cushing face on him. And it doesn't really work.
Playing a video game.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's really good video game graphics, but it's really jarring in something as, like, relatively grounded and gritty as Rogue One is for, you know, a Star Wars thing. So it's really jarring. If they had just, like, let him be in, like, shadows more, it probably would have worked just fine. But he's in light. They're like, no, full lighting. Here's the work that we did, and it is impressive, but it's also it falls into the uncanny valley a little bit. So
it also like in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, when they had to replace help me
okay, I'm going to make a wild stab here. Terrence Howard
Tony
is
Stark's.
in Iron Man 1 as Jim Rhodes, and then he's replaced by Don Cheadle the next movie.
Yes, thank you. Correct. That. And they were just like, it was a hand wave. It was like, yeah, we know. We changed the guy. Like, don't worry about it. Considering how they made this movie, but, like, there's, like, a little asterisk of, like, you might see him again, right? Like, why would you not take that as a really good opportunity to be like, oh, now we get a new actor to replace him that we can use for future Star Wars properties, because instead of doing this weird Uncanny Valley digital situation, which, I don't know, it was an interesting choice for me.
Yeah. I don't know why they don't just do that. It drives me nuts that they don't just do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think you've seen The Mandalorian, or some of it. There's that bit where
I saw it. Yeah.
deepfake Mark Hamill shows up as Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
Man, I loved that moment in the moment, but then like he pulled the hood back and I was like, oh, this is weird. Like, this is jarring.
Right?
Like, there were 2 movies that came out with the like subtitle of A Star Wars Story. This is the first one. And then you get Solo, A Star Wars Story, which is like the adventures of a young Han Solo that made him into the smuggler we know and love.
Yep.
The commercial and critical failure of the Solo movie had, I think Kathleen Kennedy came out and said something to the effect of like, we won't be recasting like these legacy characters going forwards based on the implication was based on the performance of that movie. I think that's the wrong lesson to get from that movie's failure, because the problem with that movie was that they replaced directors halfway through. That might be the problem. And I certainly don't want this. I'm going to really quick sidebar. I don't want this to be like an attack on Kathleen Kennedy, because I feel like there's a lot of weird, hateful and gendered criticism of her as a producer on the franchise. It's super gross. It's just a small, I say small, an unfortunately large subset of Star Wars fans seem to blame women, and particularly women of color, for all the problems with the franchise these days. And I think you can kind of just trace it back to some bad decisions more than anything else that are not on their shoulders. So, sidebar over.
I think ultimately it comes down to the fact that, like, this was a movie with a lot of potential, and they did a lot of stuff right. And they tried to fit a really cool, very unique take on the Star Wars world into a pre-existing IP. You said this is what, the second Star Wars that Disney had made, right? And they had a lot of lessons that they had to learn out of that, including how do we, deal with these legacy characters if we're starting to do media that comes prior to. And at the same time, as someone who is experiencing these things, as they're trying to find that balance between illusions and fan service, as they're trying to find the balance between, we need a collection of writers and or directors to deal with this because it's such a big thing, but also we need to, make sure that everything is consistent with, I don't even know how many Star Wars properties anymore. It just didn't, I don't know. It didn't quite make it for me, but I don't think that's necessarily, it was still an entertaining movie and they did a lot of cool stuff, right? Like, I really want to know more and have a whole series around, who was it? Donnie Yen's character, the monk. He was so cool. I want to know more about that. And they do a really good job setting that up with a lot of different characters. I just wish they'd done more of it in the movie.
Yeah. Like, to be clear, like I'm showing this off if you're watching the video version of this, but I have a Star Wars tattoo that is a quote from the show Andor, that show would not exist without this movie. I really do. I love this movie despite its messiness. And I think, like, ultimately, I think that is one of the things that gets lost in criticism of things, is that something can be, like, bad or messy.
Heavy quotation marks,
yeah. You can still really love it. You can still really enjoy it. Like, I have a ton of fun watching, like, old B movies and just, like, schlocky stuff from the 70s and 80s because it's air quotes bad, but it's really fun. It's goofy and it's ridiculous. And sometimes they do wind up doing really cool things in there. And it's worth watching for that cool thing alone, if not, the fun factor of the rest of it. So,
I was having a really good chat with a friend today who was over for brunch, and we were talking about sometimes you just gotta let yourself do the thing that's gonna be not good. Like, let yourself screw up and do the hideous art that you're gonna throw in a drawer or throw away, and that's okay. And, like, we have such high expectations for things like Star Wars, so that sometimes when there's a bad Star Wars movie, it's like if there's a bad Spielberg movie, you're like, oh, a bad Spielberg movie. But it's still a good movie. This was like, listen, I've seen many a movie with many worse problems than this Star Wars film. We just have such a high expectation for it. And the fact that they were brave enough to go and experiment and try all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Right? And then that turns into this absolutely incredible showstopper that is Andor. Because they learned some stuff when they did Rogue One and went, okay, let's take all of that and apply it, and now we got ourselves a winner. And, like, sometimes that happens, and that's not bad, necessarily. Like, you're gonna get some stuff that's like, it's okay.
Well, it's like what you aim for the stars and you land on the moon, that kind of vibe, you know?
You aim for the stars, you land on the vertical scroll.
Yeah, you land on the Star Wars. I don't know. Yeah, like they did some really cool stuff in this. Like, this is the movie that I think wound up being the source of the volumetric stage. Everyone calls it like the volume, but it's that like
is that
huge
the like circular
surround
green screen thing?
Well, not a green screen. It is a projection. It is an actual LCD LED screen. And so the appeal of that is that it provides lighting onto actors that you would otherwise have to fake or work so hard to create and then try and match with the VFX shots. So this is like the birth of that. The cinematographer on this, Greg Fraser, is in hot demand, in large part due to like his work on this. He did the Dune movies. He did the Batman in 2020. Was that 22 or 21? It was one of those years. But, like, he's like this incredibly talented cinematographer and worked on this. Gareth Edwards just did The Creator, which was like this shockingly low budget, effects driven movie, kind of in the vein of Rogue One in terms of like that kind of almost guerrilla filmmaking style.
Sure.
Yeah, like, and I mean, obviously, like Tony Gilroy has done Andor. Every actor in this has gone on to do an incredible amount of stuff in the years since. And we're coming up on 10 years since this came out, which is...
Oh my gosh.
This movie was a hit, too. I think, like, we talk about how, like, messy it is. There was so much, like... there were so many reports in the press of how much of a mess the production apparently was, and this thing still came out and made $1 billion.
I mean, Jaws was a mess too.
Yeah,
and look where that landed, right?
Yeah, like you know, for all that messiness, it is still entertaining. It is still fun, and it's still given birth to so much more. And I think that is one of my big takeaways from it. You know, I love Star Wars, and I wish more Star Wars things were a bit like this, willing to take those risks and try something really new and not frighten shareholders or an audience, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's... The question of tone as the Star Wars universe expands and we get things like Andor, and as we get things like Rosario Dawson,
Ahsoka,
thank you, and that sort of thing, and we expand beyond that into all these different parts of the universe, maintaining the same kind of space adventure, kind of cheesy, kind of fun, kind of whatever tone of the original 9, or even just the original 3, let's be honest, isn't impossible. It's not going to happen. And so allowing directors and writers to play with, like, how do we make this more suit space witches or like spy thrillers or whatever. It's really cool. And sometimes you're going to maybe get some clashing of what that could be, and, you know, okay. It's still a good movie. It's just a little bit like, if you really stare at it, it's like What Dreams May Come, which we talked about a while ago. I enjoy it because it's beautiful, and it won a bunch of stuff for, like, being so darn lovely, but was it a cohesive story? Sure, kind of. Was it a cohesive world? Go see our previous episode for the answer to that question.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think one of the things you wanted to talk about, that maybe we can take some time here before we run out of it, is the theme of characters. Because what we've already, you know, talked a bit about is the fact that Jin and Cassian and all of the folks have bits and pieces of things that would make them those really cool archetypes. But not all of it. Or it pivots, or we don't get the full picture, which leaves us wanting more, and maybe not in a good way. But I'm intrigued by what you specifically wanted to focus on, which was like themes throughout, and like seeing a character for how they were represented in there. So what were you wanting to talk through there?
Well, I've now remembered the reason that I wrote that down in our show notes. I was talking to you about this before we hit record.
Yeah.
And when I'm talking about like theme through character, I'm thinking of like, I have this take on this movie that I don't think is terribly like revolutionary or shocking, but there's this strong undercurrent through the whole thing that the Force is working for the ultimate greater good of like destroying the Death Star, of defeating the Empire.
This great evil thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Force is working through these characters to position them like pieces on a chessboard to do a certain thing at a certain time. Like it is this sublime thing that flows into people as we are told about in, you know, Obi-Wan's initial kind of like summary of what the Force is way back when. And every character in this movie, they all die. You know, spoilers. None of them make it out alive. They all sacrifice themselves for this greater good. And I think like the movie is thematically concerned with the concept of sacrifice and hope. But in the actions of the characters, to me, my read on it is they're being moved by something beyond themselves. And for a movie that has no Jedi in it, we do have Chirrut as this blind Force monk who he gets his I'm one with the Force and the Force is with me as a mantra that he repeats to himself nonstop. And Chirrut, to me, is like the touchstone for this theme, because he is, you know, he cannot see, and yet he's mowing down stormtroopers like it's nobody's business. He has a sick as hell crossbow thing that he takes a TIE fighter out with. It makes no sense except for the Force. And his ability to do all this stuff is like, it's never explicit, but, you know, it's Star Wars. So you're like, it's the Force. He's talking about the Force a lot. He's talking about the Force. It must be this thing. And
I mean, they have training montages about this.
Yeah.
Where you close your eyes and you just feel your way through the fight.
Yeah, it's like, again, A New Hope. Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them. And so to me, it's like this Chirrut winds up being this through line for me of this concept of like the Force is at work in a big way here. All these characters sacrifice themselves for this greater good, but it's almost like they all have like a moment where something else tells them to take a different action. On Edu, Cassian has he has the order to kill Galen. He has his sniper rifle set up. He's got a clean shot. He could do it and end that right there. Again, unclear how that is going to solve any problems for the Rebel Alliance, other than we're going to take out this weapons designer and he won't make another Death Star, I guess.
Right.
one Death Star it's already built. By this point, they've seen it in action. So, but he hesitates, and he can't bring himself to take the shot. And it's not necessarily implied to be because Jin has gotten through to him. It seems like an internal thing he has more than anything else. And just like, I don't know, it just feels like everyone is able to do the thing that they need to do. Bodhi is able to connect the transmitter up to their ship, and then he gets blown up. And Chirrut walks through a hail of blaster fire with his incredible mantra. No one can hit him. Like these super elite, like black-clad death troopers.
I mean, they are stormtroopers, so.
Yeah, but like they're not. No one's able to hit him. Like the stormtroopers, okay, makes sense. But the super elite dudes also can't hit him. The guys who, for some reason, speak J.R.R. Tolkien's black speech of Mordor because it's cool, cannot hit this guy. And the second,
every galaxy, that is cool.
Yeah, the second that he flips the switch, it's like whatever has been protecting him has moved on to like the next stage of the plan. And I don't see that. I don't think that this is like any sort of revelatory thing about this movie. I'm sure other people have seen this as well and talked about it as well, but it doesn't seem to be like a main narrative through point that people really talk about. So to me, it seems like this incredible, like, you want to talk about Star Wars and the Force. This is weirdly a movie to watch because of that, like, the Force is giving these characters plot armor in an interesting way. And I don't know. There's something really profound to me about all of that I really love, even if I can't fully articulate why all of this works so well for me.
I mean, one of the things within the Star Wars universe that I really enjoy is, I mean, and this is not shocking because I have part of my degree is in religion and the study of that, is the Force as a, religious whatever, whether it's, an entity, whether it is a energy of the universe, whatever the heck it is. And usually we see it under the control of either the baddies, so Darth Vader and co., or under the control of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And then as you creep out from the main 9, whatever, you start to see it bleed elsewhere because of course other people can use the Force that aren't Jedi.
Yeah.
Of course other people can use the Force that aren't Sith, right? And this is a really cool look at, if we assume that the Force is obviously real in this universe, it is a thing that exists and a power that can be harnessed through the power of faith, which we know that is true. Faith shows up differently for different people. And hope is a type of faith in the context of this movie and just generally, right? You have to have faith that things are going to turn out okay.
Yeah.
Or else, what's the point?
Yeah.
Right? And the fact that they sacrifice themselves for hope in this speaks really well and dovetails really well into the power of the Force, which is just the power of goodness, kind of, right? Mm-hmm. That's just like the vibe of the Force of like, you can force it to do bad stuff, no pun intended, but like, it doesn't work quite the same because it corrupts you, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And I think the idea that as a snapshot of what human belief can do, human asterisk, humanoid, Star Wars, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. This is a really cool piece of that story of, yeah, we've got the Star Wars Jedi with the cool swords and the whatever, but they're like a very specific sect of an entire universe that had this faith bumping around, and then it got, I'm not going to go on a religion tangent, I just can't, but like, the different perspective on that is very nice. Very nicely executed, even if it I don't know how intentional it was, but like the way it tells that story and the way it frames hope and faith as the same thing in a lot of ways. That is to say, the Force is really cool.
Yeah. There's a thing that the A More Civilized Age podcast, which is a critical Star Wars podcast.
Dropping all the Star Wars podcasts.
I love my Star Wars podcasts. And Austin Walker is one of the hosts over there, and he has repeatedly talked about how, like, like the concept of like people having like a knack is like is a cool way for the franchise to explore what the Force is or what it can be. And it's like, oh no, Bob is just good with, like, he's a good mechanic. He's not good at the Force. He doesn't have the Force. He can just fix engines real good. Is like, that's a really cool idea, I think. Yeah. Like that the Force shows up in these certain ways. And I'm going to say it, like, if you are fascinated by that idea, you might want to watch the popular TV show Andor, specifically the second season. I don't know, maybe there might be some thematic resonance there that might appeal to you.
I'm so shocked that somehow it comes back to, Farrah, you need to watch this gosh darn TV show so we can talk about it.
It's not just you, it's everybody I know and the rest of the world.
Everyone listening, go watch Andor.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it. It's gonna happen. It's a lot. Yeah, it's cool, and I like it, and I enjoy it, and I think it tries to do a lot of cool stuff. The idea that like someone has a knack for fixing speeders, and that's part of the Force and the power of good is there was a Tumblr thing that went around for a long time, and I'm sure it's still going around. It goes around all the internet of like this idea of magic, that everybody has that kind of magic of like, Susan always hits the green light. I don't know what is going on with Susan, but she has never hit a red light in her gosh darn life. Or like, oh, Tyler wins every single bingo. It's random. I don't know why he's winning bingo. He just wins bingo all of the time. Like, or some people that are really good with plants, right?
Yeah.
Some people are just really good with plants. And like that as a form of magic, but in the Star Wars context, that as a form of the Force, because you're just feeding the thing that brings you the most joy or like whatever.
Yeah.
Is really cool, and I love that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
I had a stretch of years for a while where I was like, I just have really good low-level luck. I'm not going to win the lottery, but gas prices are going to be like lower whenever I have to fill up.
It's a great
like if I need to buy something, it's going to be on sale. Like it was just like it felt like a weird thing that just kept hitting for me for like a 5-year stretch.
Nice.
The pandemic seemed to have put a bit of an end to that, but we'll see. It'll come back, It's waves.
Yeah. Right. The Force ebbs and flows, my guy. And now, perhaps it's time to flow again.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about the messiness of this film. We've talked a lot about the characters and like how good it is, but also where the problems might have lain.
Yeah.
But if you want to learn about film, just generally, doing something really well or not so well, why Rogue One?
I think that this is a great movie to watch because you can see like the finished product being so enjoyable and so impactful despite that messiness. And I think it is a testament to like the nature of film as a collaborative medium. It is a testament to the work that people were willing to put in. I just think that this is like worth watching for. You should go learn more about the making of this thing and then watch this. And then I think it'll just impress in terms of, the fact that this is as watchable and as enjoyable as it is, almost like despite those hurdles it had to overcome is fascinating. And that, we've talked about how disjointed it can feel, but I don't know, I watch this movie and I still get like weirdly emotional at the like, I am.
The end is so good.
Yeah, like I'm one with the Force and the Force is with me. Like that hits me deep in my soul. Just like the way that the characters become so self-sacrificing hits me deep in my soul. Then there's the sick as hell, like, oh no, the T-Rex is back moment of Darth Vader's here and he's going to wreck some dudes. That's
classic.
It's corny, but it's so fun.
I feel like every Star Wars property, it's like, how can we remix Vader's theme to make it sound dope as hell, but also not the same?
Yeah, I think, this movie's just like, it's just, it's fun. And I'm not usually the person to be like the vibes-based enjoyment, but I think I am in this case. So, you know.
And it's a Star Wars property. I'm shocked.
Star Wars property.
Truly
shocking.
Yeah.
You know, so many reasons I like it. Like, I'm wearing a Rebellions Are Built on Hope pin on my shirt.
Behind your microphone.
Yeah, no one.
Tragic.
There it is.
Beautiful.
Full glare.
So cute.
No one can see it.
Adorable. It's
Well,
it's good.
Yeah, but like ignoring my entirely vibes-based perspective on this movie, if you are just looking to watch something on a Friday night, why Rogue One? Why should you let the film speak? To paraphrase the movie.
We didn't even talk about that. So many things to say about this movie. Ignoring Ben's vibes-based review and going straight into my vibes-based review, which is the important one. No. I think you watch this movie because, I mean, the same reason Ben said, because despite all of the disjointedness and all of the moments of like, why? What is this? It's a really fun movie, and the tone is at times inconsistent, but like it nails the ending. It's like watching a gymnast's routine where they are like, sometimes they stumble, sometimes they're like, oh god, she's gonna jump and fall off the thing, and you're like, I'm not sure, but at the end they land and it's spectacular, and there's like fireworks and stuff. That is not meant to be a joke based on the ending of this film, but it feels like one, and I feel bad about it. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's a good movie. Ultimately, like, there's a lot of things that I could asterisk about it, and we've talked about it. But at the end of the day, it's a good movie. It is entertaining. The cast did an incredible job. It is beautifully shot. And it still has that, like, Star Wars world vibe that is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So that's why you watch Rogue One on a Friday night.
I have a weird analogy I just thought of. It's like a Led Zeppelin guitar solo, you know? It sounds cool as can be. It's cool as hell. But when you like listen too closely, you're like, it's pretty sloppy. There's some technical issues here, but it's really cool.
Might also be like a certain podcast. I mean, I would never say that about us. Speaking of us, you can find us at Patreon as Coffee and Kurosawa. You can also find us on Blue Sky as Coffee Kurosawa Pod. You can find me, Farrah Sarpkaya, on Blue Sky, Substack, and Letterboxd as Farrah Kaya, and at sarpkaya.ca, where I lend my voice as a voice actor. Ben, where can the people find you?
People can find me on Blue Sky and Letterboxd as at Benjimon or at the Benjimon. It's some variation on those usually, so that's where I'm most active.
Every time I go to tag you on Blue Sky, I'm like, there's a the at the start of it. I'm like, the Ben. Why is Ben not showing up? There's a the there.
Yeah. Yeah. The definite article, you might say.
Well, that's it. That's all the time we have for Rogue One, tragically. Because I feel like we could go on about this for like another 3 hours.
I could.
Or like a whole 6-series podcast that turns into a whole other podcast, apparently.
Yeah, there's an entire part of me that's like, what if we just became a Star Wars podcast? I would never have any trouble talking about that.
And then I would finally watch Andor.
Yeah, that would be selfish, though, so...
Listen, there's a lot of other Star Wars properties that we're going to have to watch for this pod, and I'm excited to do it. So, all that to say, thank you for listening.
Yes.
And we'll see you next time on Coffee and Kurosawa.